Chris Chan. No matter how long it's been, people always go back to the honeypot for one last time. And then that one last time becomes the fifth last time, and so on. Even with all the documentation and knowledge of Chris Chan being spread over the last decade and a half, there are still so many interesting things about Chris and his many creations. Which is why I decided that today we would take a look back at what drew people in to Chris in the beginning. The long-running comic series, SONICHU, the Electric Hedgehog Pokemon. Many people seem to forget where Chris Chan came from and what really put him on the map, especially because of what happened with the, Barbara situation. But we aren't going to be talking about that, because early SONICHU is a perfect time capsule into Chris's past. A different time, if you will. I've been focusing a lot recently on Chris Hansen pedophile documentaries and Saw film icebergs, and don't worry, more of that kind of content is coming down the pipeline, but for today, I thought it'd be cool if we take a break and talk about something different. So welcome, I'm Mecha Broski, and this is the SONICHU Issue 0 analysis.
You can fly if you try, leaving the past behind. Heaven only knows what you might find. Dare to believe you can survive.
Despite being the title star, SONICHU was not the first canon character in the comics to be created by Chris. That honour instead goes to Bionic the Hedgehog, a Sonic recolor that Chris had created sometime in November of 1996. Bionic is a professional basketball player and is directly related to SONICHU, as Chris claims he is SONICHU's long-lost brother. The character is simply an orange recolor of Sonic, and sometimes Bionic is portrayed as speaking in Ebonics, using terminology like homie and dog and other slang terms of that nature. As if Chris thinks that all basketball players speak like the fucking bowlers or something. During the early years of SONICHU's production, Chris completely neglected to actually feature Bionic the Hedgehog in any of the comics until issue 6, where he returned for a brief appearance. The creation of SONICHU came many years later, as Chris would be tasked with creating a cover for a CD in his graphic design class. He would be prohibited from utilising copyrighted characters, so after much deliberation, he decided to combine the characters of Sonic and Pikachu into one character, which he would go on to name SONICHU. What ironically started out as an attempt to avoid copyright infringement soon became one of Chris's crowning achievements, and a character that Chris still believes to this day actually exists in a different realm. Alright, so we got a lot of pages to get through, so why don't we just begin? The first page of the comic shows a lone Pikachu staring off into the distance at a city spun into chaos and disarray. The text at the top of the page informs us that the perfect chaos monster, which is a variant of the Chaos from the Sonic franchise, is the one terrorizing the city. It also tells the reader that Sonic is pondering on the destruction being caused as well, although he isn't present on this page. There's also a small panel featuring Chris himself, informing the reader that he is the creator and author of the SONICHU series. Get used to these, because Chris makes small little cameos and appearances outside of his own in-comic and in-universe appearances quite frequently, to give the reader information they may not have been able to deduct from reading the comic itself. The second page is devoid of text, but shows Sonic using the Chaos Emeralds to transform into Super Sonic in order to fight the monster. The Pikachu from the previous page decides to watch the battle from afar. The page specifically shows off how flawed the format of most of Chris's comics are. While many different formats exist to make it easy for the reader to tell what's going on in each art panel, as well as what order to read them in, the biggest issue with the SONICHU comics is that with such simplistic art and basic colouring, it can tend to be difficult to tell what order you're supposed to read the panels in, and, well, it's pretty difficult to also tell what's going on with them in some cases. While it's usually considered lazy to leave backgrounds blank in comics and manga, the most visibly legible pages of the SONICHU comics are usually the ones where Chris chooses to focus on the characters and leaves the background completely blank. The third page depicts Super Sonic getting attacked by the monster, sending him flying backwards through the air and directly into the civilian Pikachu. We then see a female Raichu sitting 15 miles away from the ongoing battle. Inexplicably, it gets hit by a rainbow, although Chris states that the rainbow was caused by the collision between Sonic and Pikachu. Kel, a Pokemon trainer in the comics, who was actually based off of one of Chris's real-life friends at the time, returned to see what the rainbow was, and to check on her Raichu Pokemon, only to find that her Pokemon had inexplicably turned into a pink talking Pokemon similar in appearance to Amy Rose from the Sonic franchise. Kel, surprised by this realization, claims that her new Pokemon is as pretty as a rose, giving her the name Rosechu. We also see that Sonic and Pikachu have become one, leading to the creation of Sonichu. Sonichu wakes up and takes little time to get back into the fight, only taking a second to recognise that he has changed. He uses one thunder attack against the monster, which now has more of a resemblance to Godzilla than it does the perfect Chaos monster, and manages to defeat it in a single attack. On page 7, the reader gets to see the aftermath of the battle. Sonichu is staring out into the sunset and thinking about his situation. Interestingly, this page confirms that Sonichu has the abilities and body of Sonic the Hedgehog, but the mind and voice of Pikachu, as Sonichu stated that he doesn't know the name of Sonic until he heard the crowd chanting his name for defeating the monster. Chris pops up and assures the audience that more stories and adventures are on the way for Sonichu. After the first initial story of the book is finished, the next few pages serve as an introduction to the city of Quickville, as well as an introduction to the characters. This page features the first of many completely nonsensical sentences that are practically ubiquitous throughout the entire comic series. The sentence reads, "The comic title is Sonichu. By that we man the Sega of the Electric Hedgehog Pokemon." It's like a bad Game Boy Advance bootleg translation or something, I have no fucking clue. We are then introduced to Kel, who is the aforementioned Pokemon trainer and former owner of Raichu before she became Rosechu, and Natesurk, an evil version of Chris, with his name being spelled backwards in order to represent that fact. This is also the first example of Chris writing someone's names backwards in order to create a new character or show that they are aligned with evil. The next page features the cover. Chris created the cover page of the comic before creating the actual comic itself. By now, it's become internet legend, and has become so synonymous with Christian Weston Chandler, it's probably the first thing you think about when you think Sonichu. It's obvious that the cover was created before the story was conceptualized, because on the cover, Sonichu refers to Chris as his father, whereas in the comic, Chris has nothing to do with the creation of Sonichu. And if he did have something to do with Sonichu's creation, that brings up some pretty weird, ideas. Implications, if you will. I don't want to think about it very much. All Sonichu material is copyrighted March 2000 to 2005 by Christian Weston Chandler. any names or persons illustrated in any of the SONICHU comics except that of Christian Weston Chandler that may seem similar to anyone in real life are purely coincidental or otherwise parodic. On the page after the copyright notice, Chris reveals that even more SONICHUs exist, as the rainbow that turned the Raichu into Rosechu had also released 5 eggs that landed in different areas around Quickville. The eggs would hatch and from them would sprout the Chaotic Combo, featuring Magi-Chan Sonichu, Wild Sonichu, Punchy Sonichu, Angelica Sonichu, and Bubbles Sonichu, all of which are named after their type and their abilities. Christian then details the villains of the story, Mary Lee Walsh and the Jerkops. Mary Lee Walsh was based off of a real-life dean that Chris had a rivalry with during his college years. Her name would later be changed to Sawila Rhyme in future issues. Again, just like with Nate Cirque, Sawila Rhyme is just Mary Lee Walsh backwards. And the Jerkops represented any form of law enforcement that Chris personally disliked. During the production of the first few issues of SONICHU, Chris would find himself in legal trouble with mole cops due to outbursts and other illegal actions whenever he would go to his local mall. Chris, being the autistic that he is, never took any of the blame for his actions and would go on to utilize his comics as an outlet to recreate these real-life issues into stories where he would appear oppressed but would always be victorious. And lastly, there is me, the intrusive creator in SONICHU's story, Christian Weston Chandler. To describe myself in real life, I'm a very creative person. I enjoy playing video games, Sonic the Hedgehog, Pokemon, and Animal Crossing. I also like to build with Lego pieces and enjoy most kinds of music. I'm also fascinated with the Transformers. I also play Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card games. Basics. 5'10", born on February the 24th, 1982. I'm working towards a computer-aided drafting and design degree at Piedmont, Virginia Community College. I'm also single, lonely, and I still need a girlfriend. Please enjoy the rest of the comic, and for more information on SONICHU, check out CWC SONICHU site at http://SONICHUChristianChannelTypod.com. Page 12, you fucking get it. SONICHU in Episode 2, Genesis of the Love Hogs, depicts how SONICHU and Rosechu end up meeting and falling in love. Whilst there isn't really much to actually talk about in this situation, it does feature Kel the Pokemon trainer from the previous episode, and ends when SONICHU and Rosechu share a crisp kiss under the lights of fireworks in the night sky. It's so cute it would almost make you forget that only 7 issues later, Chris would depict incredibly grotesque sexual intercourse between these two characters. It's almost cute enough to make you forget that fact. Over the years, Chris has shown himself to be incredibly loyal to his favourite brands, to the point where he'll create advertisements he has no legal grounds or right to do. For example, he actually got the Quickie completely shut down for a couple of days because he illegally advertised Coca-Cola on the platform. After receiving a cease and desist notice, he took the advertising down, but he would also continue to advertise things like The Cleveland Show and also Axe body spray in his comics and in his YouTube videos. The first advertisement we see in a SONICHU comic book, however, is an advertisement for a fictitious version of Pokemon on the Game Boy Advanced known as SONICHU Advanced Pokemon Lightning Edition. A game that obviously doesn't exist, but I'm surprised someone hasn't created it. The next story features the first altercation with Nate Cirque, after Sonichu and Rosechu had gone to the mall for a shopping trip. During the pair's lunch break, a wild Pokemon sent by Natesuk kidnaps Rosechu and Sonichu has to give chase. One entire page is dedicated to showing off the moves Sonichu uses in the fight to finish off the opponent. One of the attacks is curiously called Double Team, and sees Sonichu clone himself and confuse the Pokemon. It could also be construed as the fact that he's running so fast it appears there is more than one of him, but that's not really made very clear. After Natesuk retreats, everyone including Kel, Rosechu and Christian, who are now inexplicably here for some reason, begin to cheer for him, and Chris congratulates him as the mayor of Quickville. This story also happens to have an epilogue, which seems to completely forget the fact that the previous page was the first time in the entire story where Sonichu and Christian had actually met. In the prologue, Sonichu begins to call Chris his father again. Chris talks about how great his comic is despite the fact that this is in fact the first issue. He then goes on to lament the failure of his own to find a girlfriend. Chris gets into a car which has a Sonichu number plate identical to the one that he had in real life at the time, and drives off. Sonichu admires Chris's bravery and is glad to have a dad like him. Fucking weirdo. After this story, an entire section is devoted to short comic strips that Chris had drawn before the comic itself. These stories are self-contained and usually take up no less than 2 pages at most. The first story sees Sonichu and Rosechu being followed around by Blake, who is another Sonic recolor in the story. The next story follows Chris and Sonichu as they fight against Mary Lee Walsh, as she tries to foil Chris's love quest, in a similar way to how Chris states she did in real life at the time. The final short story strip sees Chris and Sonichu getting beat up by jerk-ops under the order of Mary Lee Walsh. The final story of Sonichu Issue 0 is titled Christian Chandler in Jerk-Catastrophe, a story based off of a situation that Chris experienced in real life, but is highly dramatized within the comic, something Chris would do a lot more over the course of the comic series. The story begins with Chris lamenting his 1 year and 7-month love quest, and his failure to find a boyfriend-free girl. While Chris is moping, a jerk-op approaches and tells Chris to leave for loitering. When Chris refuses, the jerk-op threatens Chris with violence and says that he will get his co-jerk-ops to beat Chris down. A fight ensues in which Chris turns into his Sonichu form, Chris-chan Sonichu, which Chris makes clear is possible due to the power of his Sonichu medallion. During the fight, the jerk-op encases himself within a metal suit of armor, but Chris-chan Sonichu uses a lightning bolt attack to destroy it. We then get to see the first example of the Kamehameha attack in the comic, which is an attack that Chris had created in order to give whoever the attack is aimed at bad luck for life. The final page of the story sees Chris issue a warning to the jerk-op and any trolls reading the comic after being victorious in the fight.
I have cursed you with bad luck and extreme misfortune. This would not have happened if you had not challenged and threatened me, as well as not leaving me alone with my ever so frustrating love quest, calling me a lying solicitor, picking on my methods of attracting a boyfriend-free 18 to 23-year-old boyfriend-free girl who I can love and trust, and most importantly, handcuffing me on 9/11 of 2004 for no good reason. I hope that you have learned to never mess with a truly frustrated version when he is on a quest for the girlfriend to share true love and trust with.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Sonichu Issue 0, hand-drawn premiere issue. Go Sonichu, go out and zap to the extreme. Not only is it poorly written, the stories don't make any sense, the art is trash, and a lot of what Chris decides to put in the books is simply what happened to him in real life, but overly dramatized to the point where he is always looking like the oppressed victim and always comes out on top. SONICHU is the perfect example of pure artistic creativity. You couldn't create this without at least being a little bit of a whack job, and honestly, I might be a bit of a whack job for enjoying it because SONICHU became one of my favourite things to read over the last few years. Barely anything makes sense, but it's something that you have to know every aspect of the backstory to really get everything out of. So if you want to look into and get deeper into the Chris Chan story and lore, I recommend doing so because SONICHU is going to give you a lot more if you actually know the backstory to the person behind its creation. Thanks for watching and have a good day.
Dare to believe you can survive. You hold the future in your hand. Dare to keep all your dreams alive. It's time to take a stand. And you can win if you dare. Everybody's trying to break your spirit, keeping you down.